Hey, it's Beau. Let's take a walk together. Today I want to talk about the stages of spiritual evolution. Now, if you're someone who you consider to be on a spiritual journey, then there are some phases that you might go through, and I want to just kind of explain these phases and explain how I went through them and how I overcame them, or how I transitioned through them. So the first stage, when you start to wake up, what might happen is you're gonna start to see the world in a different way. Instead of being so involved in the world that you don't realize, what's going on, you start to kind of take a higher perspective, and so you can kind of see things from a more objective viewpoint. And so what happens is the world starts to seem a little crazy. You start to kind of see the insanity of it all. You start to see that people are living unconsciously, that people are basically living lives prescribed to them by other people. They're just going through their lives like zombies. And you start to see the cruelty in this world, the unjustness, the unfairness. It starts to seem like the world is just like such a negative place. And this often happens to people when they start to wake up. They kind of rebel. They start to rebel against the world, rebel against the status quo. And this can be a good or a bad thing depending on how you go through this phase, because what often happens is people get stuck in this phase and they spend their whole life trying to change the world, trying to change other people, trying to force their opinions on other people, trying to get people to change. Well, the truth is, you can't change people. You can't really change the world, because the world is just a projection of people's consciousness, okay? I mean, that's how I see it, at least. So if you want to change the world, the only way to do that is to change your own consciousness, because you're not going to change other people. You can try as hard as you want, but the fact is, people are going to see their way. They're going to see how they want to see the world. I mean, it's their choice, They make the decisions. Everyone makes their own decision about how they want to see things, what they want to believe, what opinions they want to have, what stances they want to take, how they're going to behave. Everyone decides for themselves. And so there's no point in trying to change other people. You're just going to end up frustrated. And then what happens if you continue to evolve is you start to have more maturity about it, and you start to see that maybe the world is exactly what it needs to be. Maybe the world really doesn't need to be changed at all. Maybe that's just a projection of your beliefs about the world, and you're believing that the world needs to be different just from your limited perspective, because we're all individuals. We have these limited perspectives because we can't possibly see the world how everyone else sees it. Everyone has a different perspective on life. So some people think the world needs to change, while other people think the world is just fine as it is. So which is the truth? Does the world need to change, or does it need to stay the same? Well, really neither of those things are true, because the world just is what it is. It doesn't need to do anything. The world doesn't need to change. If you think the world needs to change, that's just a projection of what you have in your mind. If you think the world doesn't need to change, that's just another belief. It's just another perspective. And so when you go through this agitated phase, I want to encourage you not to get stuck in that phase. Maybe you're in that phase right now. Maybe you think that the world is unfair, that things need to change, people need to change, something needs to change. You hear that a lot. But I want to encourage you to look at it a different way. Realize that from our limited perspectives, we can't possibly know what's best for the world. I like to say that only God knows. So if you really want to do the world a service, then leave the world up to God. Leave it up to a higher power. And that's not to say we need to be passive and not do anything to make a difference in the world. But what I've found on my own journey is that the best thing what we can all do for the world is to change our own perspective, our perception of the world. The best thing we can do for other people is to change our perception of those people. So instead of trying to force people to change, trying to force change upon the world, we can take a more mature, what I would call a more spiritual perspective, and realize that maybe the world just needs to go through this phase in order for us all to wake up even more. You know, people need to suffer. Who is to say that suffering is bad? I mean, who are we to judge another person's life and say that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing? They shouldn't suffer. They shouldn't do this or they shouldn't do that. Maybe they need to do that in order to learn the lessons they need to learn to evolve spiritually. So maybe they're going through exactly what they need to go through. So who are we to judge and say that they don't have to go through it, that they shouldn't suffer, that the world shouldn't be the way it is? Who are we to say that? Because I know I've gone through a lot of suffering in my life, and I'm very grateful for it. And I would be, I mean, from my perspective now, I would be mad at someone if they tried to, change that process for me back then, because I'm so grateful today because I realize my suffering was exactly what I needed to go through to get to where I am today. And so from my new perspective now, where I am now, I wouldn't wish to change any of it. Even though back then when I was going through the suffering, I might have wished for things to be different. I might have wished for change. Now I see it differently and realize that really it was all perfect. It was all perfect. So what we call bad, what we call negative, is not really negative. That's just a perspective that we might take. But there's an even higher perspective, and that is the perspective that really all opinions and beliefs about the world, about other people, about ourselves, they're all really irrelevant. The world does not need your opinion or your belief to operate exactly as it does. God or a higher power, the universe, it makes sure that everything is in divine order and harmony. It might seem chaotic from our perspective, but all eventually works out. It all eventually works out. And so we don't need to interfere so much in that process. We don't need to try so hard to change the world or change other people or try to get them to see our way, because they're going through what they need to go through. They'll learn at their own pace whatever they need to learn. Maybe they wake up, next week, next month, next lifetime, 1,000 lifetimes from now, or whatever. It really doesn't matter, because everyone is just going through what they're going through, and they're learning. Maybe some people learn slowly, others learn a lot faster, but nonetheless, we go through life and we learn. And so who are we to take away that learning journey from someone else that might be what they need to go through? And we don't need to interfere. We can be compassionate and do our best to make a positive difference in this world, but we don't need to do so in a judgmental or controlling way. And really the most important thing of all is that you are just being your truest self in a loving, compassionate, non-judgmental way. And if you can just express yourself and just be you, be the most kind and loving person you can possibly be, that's all you need to do to change this world. You don't need to try to change people. Like, I make these videos, and it doesn't really matter to me if anyone watches these videos and is changed by them. I know that people will watch them and it will change some people, but I'm not overly invested in that. I'm just being me. When I make these videos, I'm expressing who I am, and this is just what I do, and I'm not worried about the results of it. I'm not making these videos to change the world or to change other people's lives. That's not really my purpose with this. And sure, I hope that happens. I hope that my videos change someone's life and change the world. I hope the work I do in the world changes the world in a positive way, but it doesn't really matter, because as long as I'm expressing who I am and being peaceful and loving and compassionate and kind and living my life according to higher principles, higher virtues, in order to find peace within myself, as long as I'm doing that, then nothing else really matters, because that is the only thing, that is the best thing I could possibly do for the world, is to become more peaceful, more loving, more kind, And so I just want to encourage you to stop looking outside of yourself. Stop trying to change the world and start realizing that maybe the only reason you think the world needs to change is because it's a projection of what you hold within yourself. So maybe when you say the world needs to change, maybe the reality of it is that it's only you who need to change. Maybe it's just your perception of the world that needs to change. And then when you find peace within yourself, when you start to go within, look within instead of without, then you start to see the perfection of everything. Then you start to realize that all really is perfect and in perfect harmony, and that there's nothing to change, there's nothing to do, and all can just evolve perfectly as it does, as the universe has been doing for eternity. And we don't need to interfere. We don't need to change anything except our own consciousness. And that is the most important thing of all. So I think that's all for this video. I hope you got something from it. If you liked it, leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. I'll be making a lot more videos like this in the coming future, in the near future. Thank you, my friend. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.